Test. Good morning, members. I'd like to welcome members of the public to this meeting of the Council, particularly those watching on the live stream on the Council's YouTube channel. The Council supports the principle of transparency and encourages filming, recording and taking photographs at its meetings that are open to the public. Members are advised that this meeting may therefore be filmed, recorded or photographed. Please can I ask that all members turn their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place. There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will make our way downstairs via the fire escape in the corridor behind you. The muster point is at the far end of the building. First of all, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Chris Poulton, and I understand Councillor Charlotte Lowe will be arriving later on. As it's our annual meeting, I will now vacate the chair, but before I do, can I invite the monitoring officer to conduct item 1, which is election of chair of the council. Thank you.
Good morning, members. The first item is the election of the Chair of Council. Please can I have any nominations for the office of the Chair of Council for the ensuing municipal year? Councillor Netzinger.
I would like to propose Peter MacDonald to be Chair of the Council for the coming municipal year, please.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to second that proposal and reserve my right to speak if required.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Thank you. Please can members indicate their support by a show of hands? All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? And any abstentions? Thank you very much. I formally declare the new chair of our council as Councillor Peter MacDonald until the annual meeting in 2027.
Thank you. I, Peter MacDonald, having been elected to the office of Chair of Cambridgeshire County Council, declare that I take the office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the Council's Code of Conduct in the performance of my functions in this office, and I will now sign. Thank you, members. I'd now like to invite nominations for the election of Vice Chair of the Council, please. Could I invite nominations? Thank you. Councillor Netzinger.
I would like to nominate Councillor Tom Sanderson to be Vice Chair of the Council for the coming year, please.
Thank you. And the seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second that proposal.
Thank you. Can I invite further nominations for Vice Chair of the Council, please? Thank you. Can I ask for a show of hands, please? All those in favour of Councillor Sanderson as Vice Chair? Thank you. Can I ask for votes against? And can I ask for abstentions, please? Thank you. Based on the votes, I would like to declare that Councillor Sanderson is duly elected as Vice Chair of the Council for the ensuing municipal year. Would you like to join me, Councillor Sanderson?
Thank you very much, Chair. I, Tom Sanderson, having been elected to the office of Vice Chair of office upon myself. I'm sorry, I'll do that again. Sorry. I, Tom Sanderson, having been elected to the office of Vice Chair of the Cambridgeshire County Council, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the Council's Code of Conduct in the performance of my functions in that office.
Thank you, members, and thanks for your vote for both myself and Councillor Sanderson. Item 3 on the agenda is minutes of the 17th of March and the motions log. The Council is asked to agree these as a correct record. If any member does not agree, would you raise your hand now? An updated motions log is also included in the published papers for this meeting for your information in order to report on progress. Whilst I'll not be reopening debate on the motion, any motion in the motions log, I will take questions and comments. If you wish to pursue actions further, you'll need to contact the allocated officer outside the meeting. Are there any questions and comments? Therefore, I will sign the minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Goodliffe, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations on your re-election. Motions log, it's 68E, which is the motion that is in my name. Whilst I welcome the Anti-Poverty Delivery Group meeting regularly and their considering of the Crisis and Resilience Fund guidance, as the Freedom of Information request that we put in has proven that guidance states may or may not be used to support holiday food vouchers, will this be considered by the Anti-Poverty Group and by the Community Social Mobility and Inclusion Committee at their meeting next month?
Okay, thank you. I think it's appropriate that that is raised at that committee, and if I don't know if the chair or vice chair of the committee would like to comment.
I can simply say that we are talking about what is needed to be done with the Crisis and Resilience Fund at that meeting, and no doubt we will be talking about this issue, about how we help all people across Cambridgeshire who are in need of assistance.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Councillor Goodliffe. Members, item 4 is Chair's announcements. So I have a few announcements to make today. It's with regret that, first of all, I announce the death of former County Councillor Susan Normington, who represented the Ramsey division on behalf of the Conservative Party from 1989 to 2009. She was elected chair of the council in 2005 and 2006 and an honorary alderman in October 2009. My vice chair and the chief executive attended the funeral service on behalf of the council on the 20th of April. It's also with deep regret that I announce the death of Marion Arnold, a reablement support worker within adult social care based in Ely. The council's thoughts are with the family, the friends and the colleagues at this very sad time. May I ask you all to stand for a few moments in memory. The council will wish to welcome Darren Mann, who's been appointed to the role of Service Director, Customer and Digital Services, and joined the council on the 5th of May. I'm delighted to report that the council's chief executive has been elected to serve as the chair of the Association of County Chief Executives for 2026-2027. So I'm sure he won't get bored through local government reorganisation. Members will be aware that the Mental Health Awareness Week took place from the 11th to the 17th of May, focused on action. In Cambridgeshire, colleagues focused on raising awareness, encouraging reflection and supporting team members to take action in ways that feel right for them. Members will wish to note that Carers Week, which takes place from the 8th to the 14th of June, has a theme building carer-friendly communities this year, focused on identifying carers and improving support in workplaces, GP practices and local communities. Reaching and identifying more carers is one of those priorities within the Council's all-age carers strategy, and close work with our Commission providers is helping to identify people who are in unpaid caring roles and provide them with the resources and support that they need. As Chair of the Council, I attended the following events: the Mayor of Cambridge's reception, the High Sheriff of Cambridge Declaration installation, the City of Ely Council's Civic Service, a meeting with Cambridge Acre, a fundraising event for St James's Place, the Cambridge Armed Forces Dinner, the St John Antiportum Latinum Feast, the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia flag raising, the Ramsey Murray Lecture at Selwyn College, and the Earn and Learn celebration yesterday. My Vice Chair attended the following events: Huntingdon Town Council Civic Service, presentation of Freedom of Huntingdonshire to Right Honourable Sir John Major, the March Town Council Civil Service, the Summer Dance Fest in Sapley Park Playing Fields, Huntingdon District Council's Charity Quiz Night, St George's Day flag raising and the Mayor making ceremony in St Ives and Huntingdon. I also attended 8 citizenship ceremonies and the Vice Chair attended 3. That concludes the announcements for today. Members, item 5 is item of declarations of interest. Under this item, members are asked to declare interest under the Code of Conduct in any item on the agenda for today's meeting if they're not registered in the Register of Interest. May I have any declarations of interest? Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. On agenda item 9, I was a witness for the CPS in the case that's referenced. I have taken advice from the monitoring officer who has said that I am able to speak and vote, but just to be belt and braces, I wanted to clarify that.
Thank you very much. And yes, there'll be opportunity to speak later on. Thank you. Members, item 6 is public question time, which allows members of the public to ask questions at the council meeting, provided they've given advance notice. Council has received notice of one question, the content of which has been circulated electronically to all members and published on the council's website. Can I ask Miss Susie Williams to come forward and ask her question? Welcome, Miss Williams.
Hello, I was very pleased to read a BBC article by Phil Shepker from 24th of April, Weaknesses in Region Waste System, Meeting Told. The article reported on a meeting of the Environment and Green Investment Committee, where the waste manager of RECAP, which deals with recycling for Cambridgeshire councils, raised the possibility of building a recycling processing facility in Cambridgeshire. It was implied that the current contract for Cambridge City and South Cambridgeshire with Regen in Northern Ireland is problematic. The RECAP manager said, "We recognise that that is a long journey to potentially build and operate a facility, but that's something that the strategy was aiming to explore and see whether it is viable or whether we'd need to carry on going through the mainstream and the market providing solutions for us." Under our existing contract, the 2 councils send all their recycling 400 miles to Northern Ireland just for sorting and then bring it back to London and Europe for recycling. The trucks generate considerable amounts of carbon emissions and particulates, which is not really acceptable for 2 councils who are aiming to become net zero. I'm just going to miss the next bit. Please, could you give further information on how likely it is that councils will build an MRF in Cambridgeshire and when construction might possibly start and be completed? I will be so pleased if this solution is chosen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hathorn.
Thank you for asking this question today. You're absolutely right that the district and city councils have taken a delegated responsibility for organising the disposal of dry mixed recyclate alongside their collection responsibilities for curbside recycling. The RECAP, Recycling in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Waste Partnership, which Cambridgeshire County Council is a member of, alongside all the district and city councils and Peterborough Unitary Authority, has discussed the possibility of working together on future provision for dry mixed recyclate processing due to the high cost and other challenges of some market-based solutions in the last procurement. The waste market and providers do not serve the East of England particularly well, and there does not appear to be sufficient capacity to take all of the dry mixed recyclate collected in the region. To ensure the costs are affordable for the RECAP partnership, part of the soon-to-be newly adopted RECAP resource and waste strategy, proposes that one of the actions should be researching the options for how to structure any commercial arrangement. Then a business case will need to be created, which would look at the best solution, how to fund it, and options for the location. The partnership is starting this work now, but this will be a long process, and the timescales of the project are yet to be developed and agreed. The project will also be impacted by the potential changes coming from local government reorganisation. But because the strategy has been agreed in advance of these changes, it is anticipated that this project will remain supported by the new unitary councils. It's not as straightforward as just building an industrial unit, putting some kit in there and switching it on. It's a long, expensive, slow process, which requires a license from the Environment Agency, which is not straightforward to get. It needs to get through planning permission. A new facility would create significant local traffic in its own area, so there is likely to be objections to it. And with the prospect of local government reorganisation, that has slowed down the prospects of any big project being started in the near future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Williams, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, well, I know that the current very unsatisfactory contract with Northern Ireland lasts till 2030, so you do have a bit of time with a possible 2-year extension. And I know that the councils can't really get out of that contract at all before then. So you do have a few years. I'm not really sure how much the councils are for this plan or not.
Thank you. Councillor Hathorn.
Obviously, I can't speak for all of the councils. I can speak for this council. We've got it in the strategy. We are looking at this, but this is not the time when this council is in a position to make big, expensive decisions for the long term. This council is due to be dissolved in a few years' time, so it's a really difficult time. But we are looking at it as RECAP, as a partnership, and we are looking forward to be making sensible decisions about how we process our mixed dry recyclate moving forward.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ms. Williams, for coming to ask this important question. Members, item 7 is petitions. Allow members of the public to present petitions in accordance with the agreed protocol. No petitions were received, and I therefore move to the next item. Before I proceed with the rest of the agenda, can I remind you, I'm sure you don't need reminding on the audio and video, the voting system. In order to register to speak, please raise your hand, and myself or the Vice Chair will add you to our list of speakers. When I invite you to speak, please press your microphone button. If you wish to raise a point of order or a point of personal explanation, you'll need to raise your hand. I tend to be strict about raising a points of order and points of personal explanation. Raising a point of order means the member believes that there's been a breach of the council rules of procedure or law. So I require the member to indicate the rule or law which he or she considers has been broken. If this belief is challenged, I as chair will be the final arbiter. Point of personal explanation may only relate to some material part of an earlier speech by a member raising the point, which may appear to have been misunderstood in the present debate. Again, I'll be the final arbiter. I'd also like to remind members that if a member rises on any of these points, the other member on their feet should sit down until the point has been determined. All speeches from members should be addressed through the chair. And can I remind members of the Local Government Association Debate Not Hate campaign, which says that debating and disagreeing with one another is a healthy part of democracy. Abuse and intimidation is not acceptable. Thank you. The next item is item 8A, and this is a recommendation to the full council from the Environment and Green Investment Committee related to recycling in Cambridge and Peterborough resources and waste strategy 2025 to 31. Can I ask the chair of the Environment and Green Investment Committee, Councillor Hathorn, to move that recommendation, which is set out on page 3 of the agenda to be adopted, and ask the Vice Chair, Councillor Bostanci, to second. Councillor Hathorn.
Thank you. I'm going to speak on this item and the following item as a pair. So I'm pleased to present the Resources and Waste Strategy and Design Guide, which is a result of significant hard work by RECAP and waste officers from across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. RECAP is the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Waste Partnership. It has been in operation for over 25 years with the support of all councils within this area. The partnership takes a long-term view on the issues impacting waste management and has established innovative approaches to challenges such as economies of scale through bulk buying of waste vehicles or using data to challenge contractors for better pricing. Not all counties operate like this, and we reap the benefits of having a more collaborative, strategic view on waste in Cambridgeshire. The 2 documents we are considering today have been out to public consultation and revised accordingly in response to public comments. The design guide sets out what the collection authorities need from new developments to be able to collect waste efficiently and cost effectively. It ensures that the waste solutions being designed and constructed, such as underground storage, waste storage, are compatible with the vehicles and machinery of the waste collection authorities. It also helps control costs through standardisation. So I hope you'll confirm your support for this design guide today. The Resources and Waste Strategy outlines the current situation in waste locally and provides a shared vision for waste moving forward. It's particularly important to have agreement across our waste services as we go through local government reorganisation, and the RECAP partnership are working hard to agree key projects during this period to provide a consistent message to the commercial sector about future waste processing objectives as well as our key priorities. Waste is an incredibly important area for local authorities. Most of the time, councils just quietly fulfil their waste responsibilities. Like a swan swimming, the waste service silently or almost silently glides through our streets, working really hard behind the scenes. As long as bins are collected and waste processed, this waste service can quietly and smoothly get on with its work. That said, I want to outline how challenging the waste environment for councils is and how much work is going on in the background. Government has made a lot of legislative changes around waste recently, and there are more changes coming. These changes strongly steer how councils operate. Take waste disposal, this council's responsibility. The cost per tonne of sending waste to landfill in landfill tax alone is £130.75 before collection and processing. And there are significant carbon taxes associated with waste incineration or energy from waste. Waste is expensive and all councils are committed to reducing waste. But councils have very little ability to influence people's behaviours because government controls things so tightly. And not all of government's new laws are as smart or effective as they could be. Comparing newer laws to the 5p plastic bag tax, this was a very effective waste tax which completely changed consumer behaviours. The customers saw the 5p charge on their bill and had to make an active decision about paying the charge, which they could avoid. Conversely, the producer pays plastic packaging tax created under the previous government is a tax on plastic packaging paid by the producer, which is then absorbed into the product price. The consumer can't see that they are paying the tax and cannot choose to avoid it. Consequently, there is very little pressure to change packaging materials. If we as a country want to reduce waste, government needs to get a lot smarter about incentivising the right behaviours. Even with all these challenges, by having a waste partnership and talking to our partners, Cambridgeshire continues to innovate. Cambridgeshire's waste is processed under a waste PFI signed in 2008. This is difficult to operate within. The County Council bears all the costs of changes to law that affect how our waste is processed, and there have been a lot of costly changes recently. Despite this, we are offering, in partnership with the new city and district collection arrangements, a weekly household food waste service where food waste is taken to anaerobic digestion. The anaerobic digestion process produces biogas, which can be used to generate electricity, heat or fuel, and the processed residues used as a natural fertiliser. This will significantly reduce potent methane emissions and hopefully reduce overall levels of food waste, which costs an average family around £720 a year. I believe, despite the challenges our waste service faces, that we are moving in the right direction and hope you will support these 2 important documents today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bostanci.
I would like to second.
Would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
Reserve my right.
Okay. Members, can I ask for any speakers or questions? Councillor Green. And this is on item 8A. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was very encouraged by the strategy document, which does recommend that processing happens locally. I'm very encouraged by Councillor Haythorn's response to the public question as well. I hope that we can see an end to what has been going on in Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire with the blue bin recycling. And just so I can make members aware, if you live in Cambridge or South Cambridgeshire, your blue, I'll reiterate what Miss Williams said in her public question, your blue bin recycling travels to Northern Ireland just to be sorted and then is passed on to other locations throughout the UK or Europe for processing. So yes, I'm very encouraged to see that this has been that there is going to be an effort to change this. I think this council must do everything it can to change this. Other counties can process their blue bin recycling locally. Why can't Cambridgeshire? And we must keep up the pressure to change this, as this council has succeeded by the unitary as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have other speakers? Councillor Black.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I don't think we often hear our waste disposal procedures compared to a SWAN. And I'd like to thank the officers for all the work they do on trying to get us achieving better on the environment on these subjects. But I think we have to acknowledge that within the proposals we have, there is a mucky duck here, and it is indeed the transport of waste all the way to Northern Ireland and back. And everybody can see that this looks ridiculous, and it's what we have here is essentially market failure. We have privatisation not working, and I don't like hearing local government review used as an excuse for doing nothing or delaying things. We have a new government after 15 years of the same. We have a vast need to change, and we need to change quickly. And I don't think we should be saying that local government review stops local councils being innovative and planning for the future. And indeed, I think on these sort of issues, we should be trying to get things done as quickly as possible. And I would certainly like to see us moving towards getting a publicly owned facility for this much more quickly than we are currently thinking of. This isn't the worst privatisation arrangement that lets down this council. It's not even the worst privatisation arrangements letting down this council as far as the Environment Committee is concerned. But it is an important issue, and I'm not convinced that the administration really is showing the urgency it should do in tackling these things. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do I have other speakers? Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. I sit on VCAP. I don't think it's a declarable interest, but I'll mention it anyway because I'm appointed to it by another council, and also on the Environment Board. And I think the work that has been done on this is very collaborative. It's been very helpful, though I don't agree with everything that's been decided. Just to respond to a couple of points raised today, it's not market failure when markets don't deliver the outcome you want. That's markets reflecting reality. It would only be failure if they simply couldn't do it, but sometimes that's not the reason. Things are not always as simple as they appear. It's also not acceptable for me to do whatever it takes to make a change. It's not ideal to send things to Northern Ireland. I accept that, and I'd like to see a change that changes that, but only if it's cost effective for the taxpayer. If this works out to be the cheapest way to do it for the taxpayer, then I would carry on supporting doing it, for the simple reason that I don't think we need to be layering costs upon taxpayer for virtual projects. So I do think that needs to be looked at carefully before a decision is taken. And then finally, I was a little sad not to see either this council or VCAP commit to not sending things to incinerators, although it's mainly the proposed Wisbech incinerator that I would like that declared on. I really would like to see them say we're not going to incinerate things. It's not green, it's not healthy, and we shouldn't be doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have other speakers on this? Councillor Morgan, you're indicating to speak.
that I'm very supportive that the area as a whole has a waste management program, and that there is consideration of taking some of the infrastructure in-house or to develop more of our infrastructure locally. I think that the design guide for developments in terms of making sure that there's enough space for bins is very appealing. But one thing to consider with inside the waste management design guides is whether these design guides force car dependency or force sort of aesthetic trade-offs within developments, requiring, for example, 5-meter roads. Then that might, if the placement of the bins is not designed properly, this will sort of take up more and more space by asphalt and less by nature within developments. We risk sort of making the design of some of these locations more car dependent than they should be, and we risk preventing sort of innovation and experimenting around sort of design and feel of places with low traffic designs, if we are forcing developers to place waste management wide roads throughout it. So there's got to be thoughts of when these rules can be ignored, or when we can really think about communal waste stores which prevent these lorries basically carving up new developments and constraining new developments, and how we take them forwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other speakers? Councillor Bosansi, would you reserve your right to speak?
Yeah, I don't need to speak now.
Okay. Councillor Hathorn, do you want to sum up? This is on 8A.
Thank you. That was a very healthy debate. Thank you very much. So I would just like to point out that the biggest challenge this authority faced is processing waste under a PFI, which was set up under the previous Labour government in 2008, and it runs until 2036. That is the biggest challenge. Despite that, by working with RECAP and by working with our partners, we still managed to be innovative in Cambridgeshire. So I think there is a success story there, but we should not underestimate the difficulties of these and the political decisions that have made the situation we face in this county difficult. The recycling of mixed dry recyclables is also an ongoing challenge, but it is not a responsibility of this authority. The district and city councils have decided that they wanted responsibility. They have a delegated responsibility for this. They made the decisions, although a number of members have discussed this. This was not a decision of this council. It is outside this council. That said, as part of the RECAP partnership, this council can be involved in conversations about the possibility of a future mixed dry recyclables processing facility. But I will reiterate, you can't just build an industrial unit and switch on the processing of recyclable materials. It is a long, slow, expensive process. And it would have to be done with the agreement of our partners, and that includes Peterborough. And I cannot overstate the challenges entailed in working together across partner organisations which may have very different perspectives on matters. Any new facility would require a business case, significant funding, work with partners across the different authorities, which can be difficult. Land needs to be found, and land for waste processing needs to meet a lot of important criteria. Waste processing requires a licence from the Environment Agency. The reason for the delays on the upgrade of the Milton Household Recycling Centre is because we are waiting for the Environment Agency. They do not move quickly. A new facility will create significant local traffic and may not be warmly welcomed by neighbours. There are likely to be objections. All of that work is difficult, expensive and slow, and it needs excellent people, consistency and continuity. What we have in this strategy is an approach that makes it possible to consider that. There is no commitment there are no predetermined decisions. That work will be done. The best decisions made for Cambridge will be made, and we will continue to be innovative. And this strategy sets the groundwork for that and the council's waste processing for the next period of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, can I check, is there a general consensus on this motion, or do we need to move to a vote? Members, I think that there's general consensus. If anybody disagrees, could you just raise your hand? Thank you. I see no objections, and therefore we'll take this part of the motion 8A as carried. Thank you. The next item is 8B. This is the recommendation to the Council from the Environment and Green Investment Committee relating to the Recycling in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Waste Management Design Guide supplementary planning document. That is quite a mouthful. Can I once again ask the Chair of the Environment and Green Investment, I know Councillor Hathorn, you said you covered some points, whether there are additional points that you want to make in support of the recommendation set out on page 3. Thank you.
I think fundamentally, I do recognise the fact that if you set out a design guide, it does limit what the designers of a new development can do. However, it is fundamentally like saying, in Cambridgeshire, we use a 3-pin plug, so we want everyone to install a 3-point plug socket. We are literally the design guide literally specifies how the recycling will be collected, and if developers can conform to the specifications, then beyond that they can do what they like with the rest of the development. Just make sure you design your place so that the collection authorities can pick up the waste for your residents. And that's what this design guide is about. So I hope you will support it today.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bostanci, would you like to second, and would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I would like to second and reserve my right.
Thank you. Members, do we have other speakers on item 8B? If not, then Councillor Bostanci, it's back to you.
Thank you. I don't need to speak.
Councillor Hathorn, do you want to add anything else? Members, I think that there is general support in favour of the motion. If anybody disagrees, could you once again raise your hand now if you disagree? I see no objections, and therefore we take the motion as carried. Thank you very much. Item 9 is the Roman Bank and Peckover division on pages 38 to 40 of your agenda. Can I draw members' attention to the addendum, which reflects the changes since the publication of the report on the agenda and was circulated to members on the 13th of May, published on the Council's website? I would like to move that the altered recommendation as set out in the addendum be adopted, and Councillor Sanderson, as my Vice Chair, will second those recommendations. So can I ask for speakers? I know Councillor Hoy, you wanted to speak. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to speak towards the end, but I'm happy to speak now because I've thought long and hard really about what to say today, and indeed whether to say anything at all, to be honest, because sometimes, as they say, least said the better. But unfortunately, I've never been one to keep my mouth closed, so that probably was not going to go too well. So I kind of want to focus a bit about what happened to me. Now, I don't want to say that to be a victim, and I don't want to sort of pretend that what happened to me was the worst thing in the world, because actually people every day go through far worse things than what happened to me. So, to pretend that somehow I was hard done by when there are people having real suffering is wrong. But I also don't want us to just quietly accept that abuse in public life is okay, and that the election rules aren't in place for a reason, because they are. We all of us follow election rules when we stand. We put ourselves forward, we make our case to the electorate as to why we should stand. Obviously, we understand that perhaps we make wild political claims, probably on all sides. We've perhaps said things that are slightly exaggerated. Perhaps we don't always admit that we do, but there's a big difference, we know, in saying perhaps a claim that is a little bit exaggerated and telling an outright untruth about somebody. And that is where the difference lies. And I think that is why the reason I want to speak about that today is because, let's be honest, that is the reason that we're having this by-election. The reason that residents in Roman Bank and Peckover currently have no representative on this council is because the law was breached. So I just want to take everyone back to, I think it was around April 2025 when the comment was made. And the comment was, Samantha Hoy was sacked from her job in care for fraud. No wonder Wisbech is in such a state. Reform UK will fix this. Now, when I read that, I can't even really put into words how upset and angry I was, because I suppose, first of all, there was the panic, like, will people believe this? Because we all know that sadly, in the world of social media now, you know, often people make these statements and people don't stop to think, is it true? They just believe anything they read nowadays. So that was going through my mind. Obviously, my concern for my employment, because being a counsellor isn't my only role. I do have employment, and I was going to have to explain to my employers why this thing was written online. I have an enhanced DBS check. I've never committed a crime. Have never been sacked from a job even. So to have to, go to work and explain this when you don't want your work to be brought into your electoral job is not nice. And also bearing in mind, my job is working with teenagers and young people. They also see what happens on social media, and they were asking me, what is this about? And that is a difficult conversation to have, because obviously I don't want to be biased, and I have to be very mindful of that because it's my job. But at the same time, you are very upset and angry. So all of that was going on, and obviously having to explain to people on the doorstep why this is being raised and why this lie has been told. And then the wait of a year for the Criminal Justice Service to work, and that's not a criticism of them. Again, there's far more probably important cases that they were hearing at the time, but that waiting of a year is not a nice thing to go through. And then to go to court, and again, I've not been to court before, so to go and sort of go in your little witness box and take your oath, that is quite a daunting experience, and to read out what happened and to answer questions on what happened, and then obviously be cross-examined like you are some kind of criminal when you've done nothing wrong. Because obviously, they are entitled to a defence, and they are going to put up a defence. And then to have to sit there and hear the person say I deserved it, to then say, which was said in court, that I deserved it, to say that it didn't happen, that there was some long story about how things were written in a notebook. I mean, it just was, as the judge said, an absolute nonsense. And it just wasn't nice. And it's happened now, and it's just one of those things. And the process is the process, and we all have to go through that. And whoever wins at the end of June, hopefully there'll be a good counsellor for the area, because that's really what this is about. But I just want to close by saying I don't blame everyone in reform, because we've all had probably bad apples that we would rather have not had. I do get that. But I am disappointed that I have never, even privately to this day, had an apology from a single member of Reform. In fact, people have defended him and said it was just a mistake. So admitting that, the hacking was was not a defence, admitting that he actually did do it. And it's just sad. It would have been nice. I mean, I'd like to have had that happen to someone in my group. I would have, perhaps not publicly, we don't have to publicise everything, but could have privately come and said, I'm sorry this happened. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I have Councillor Goodliffe, Councillor Black, Councillor Tierney, Councillor Bradnam, and Councillor Netzinger. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst Councillor Hoy and I do not always see eye to eye, I do recognise her absolute dedication and hard work in her role. This whole episode has been incredibly hard, and I cannot understand how difficult this has been for her. I'd like to commend her taking the appropriate action and her dignity throughout this process. I look forward to welcoming whoever is the new representative for Roman Bank and Peckover, and hope that whoever that is will be ready and willing to embrace their role as a corporate parent for our children in care and our care leavers in Cambridgeshire. Thank you.
Very much, Councillor Black.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd also like to extend our sympathy towards Councillor Hoy, and councillors should not be put through what she's been put through, and we do recognise her contributions as a councillor. I was going to do a sort of knockabout retrospective of Councillor Osborne's time with us in the council. I think I'll just say I do feel that he has been an exemplary councillor for reform. It's sort of traditional on these occasions to comment on how long and outgoing councillors serve with us, and it does seem amazing that he's been one of our number for over 365 days, and I think he will be remembered. The remarkable thing he said in the Children and Young Persons Committee about the people in care, that we are corporate parents, are about.
Yeah, I think we'll steer clear of that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think an even more remarkable lesson has been given to us by Councillor Osborne about the importance of truth-telling in politics. And I think there was a quote that if you're going to tell a lie, you tell a big lie and repeat it very often. I think that's from Goebbels, actually, or something. And I thought a shocking example of the conduct that was that, when pointed out that this jibe was unfair, that it wasn't withdrawn and it was just doubled down on. And I fear that that is the sort of thing that does coarsen our politics today and that we shouldn't be carrying on with. So sympathy to Councillor Hoy for the mill that she's been put through. And I think it's good that we've come to the conclusion we have now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney, then Councillor Nessinger.
Thank you, Chair. It's really tempting, because we're all politicians, to make political points when things like this happen. And I don't think we should do it. I do not hold a single member of Reform responsible for one bad egg. I know we all have differences and we might all fall out with one another from time to time. But if we use this to make political points, we take away the personal, and the personal is what matters. When somebody does something wrong, we need to all say, don't do that. That's wrong. If we make silly political points and make it about political parties, it weakens the point we're trying to make, which is that a friend of mine was treated abominably and the man that did it has paid the consequences, rightly so. Thank you.
Councillor Nessinger.
Thank you. I would like to join others in thanking Councillor Hoy for her extremely dignified words today and commend her for her courage throughout the court process, which, as she says, must have been incredibly difficult for her. As in so many cases, the court process is incredibly tough for victims. Beyond thanking Councillor Hoy for both her courage in this case and for her long service at this council, I also want to make a point about electoral law and the role of political parties. Electoral law is complex, and one of the things that political parties usually do to support the candidates that stand for them at election time is to appoint agents who are expert in electoral law and make sure that the people standing for those political parties follow the rules, and that candidates in elections know what is allowed and what is not allowed and stick with those rules. There are many of us in this chamber who have noticed over the past few years that councillors for reform are their own agents at elections. They do not get that support from their political party, and nor are they trained in electoral law as agents for other parties are. And that provides a risk for all those who are standing for reform, who are not given the details. I think it's worth noting that if you break electoral law, if you are the agent, you can be sent to prison. It is no joke. And I think those standing for reform need to be aware of the risks that they are taking if they are standing in those situations and they are not given the training that is required, because it is no small thing to be taking on the role of an agent in an election. So I just wanted to make that point and to be clear about the risks that there are for those taking on the roles of election agents and dealing with electoral law. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Bradnam, Councillor Tong, Councillor Seif.
Thank you, Chair. And I wanted to thank Councillor Hoy for her courage and tenacity under extreme provocation. And I wanted to thank Councillor Hoy for the dignity that she's shown in representing her residents in Wisbech East, but also in representing this whole county council in this unpleasant matter, and also for upholding the standards which were so sadly lacking in the erstwhile councillor for Roman Bank in Peckover. And I also wanted to thank her just as a human being for standing up in that very difficult scenario and saying her piece clear and loud, and I'm glad for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tong.
I will also try and keep this relatively unpolitical. I do think we need to focus on the person that has faced the most hardship here, which is Councillor Hoy. And I just want to also commend you, not just for what you've gone through, but also the bravery you've put into actually standing up for yourself. Because I think when you face an injustice like that, and it's very difficult, And sometimes there is a temptation to kind of fold and not fight back. And you've really gone and sought out the justice that you deserve for the situation, because the comments made against you were disgusting. They were completely unjustified. And I think it's really important that the standard is set for everyone. We need to show there are consequences to making claims like this. I also, as has been noted by another councillor, I can't remember who, it might have been several, that Roman Bank and Peckover really haven't had that. They haven't got the treatment they deserve. They deserve a councillor that's going to follow law, that's going to stand by them. And I really hope in the upcoming election, they finally get someone that's going to represent them to the standard that they deserve.
Thank you, Councillor Seif, then Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chair. It is very noticeable to me that the Reform Party has not said a single word about this, and I'm surprised that they haven't come forward with something. So through you, Chair, and I don't know whether this is within the rules or not, can I ask you to ask Reform, perhaps the Chair of Reform, whether he would like to make a comment on this particular sad affair? I'm not allowed
That's
to
really,
do that.
as with all members, that's really up to them.
Well, of course, I do understand that, but anyway, I've made my point.
Thank you. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. This really is not appropriately the time to make party political comments, but there are lessons to be learned in this for all of us. Because I'm sorry to say that councillors from all political parties, and for that matter, independent councillors have been found to have breached proper guidelines, to have broken the law, to have broken electoral law, and have been disqualified. This is not the first disqualification there has been of a councillor, and those disqualifications have spread right across the party political spectrum. So it's a reminder to all of us in this chamber that the behaviour that is required of us, both at election time and at other times, must be upheld. And for any of us to ignore that and for any of us to forget about that, we do so at our peril, which is why prosecutions such as this are appropriate. It's not the first time locally we've had allegations made about improper, or I say locally in our general area, about improper procedure at election time. We had the false statements on nomination papers issue, which had been raised in Norfolk, just across the border from us, a few years ago, where the candidates from a political party not represented here today falsified the signatures on their nomination papers and were found guilty of that and were therefore disqualified. And it's absolutely vital that electoral law is followed and that there's no fear or favour as far as the police or the Crown Prosecution Service are concerned, and that they will take action against any and all political parties if the law is found to have been breached. So I welcome what has happened as a lesson for us all. I commend Councillor Hoy for her perseverance over the course of a very difficult year that she's had, and I trust that all of us will learn from what has happened here, and we will ensure that we don't even come close to crossing any of those red lines.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
Thank you, Chair. What a tangled web we weave when we choose to deceive. I'd just like to say that as a former colleague of Andy Osborne, he gave me a right old cock and bull story too. And he took his own colleagues in as well. So I'm not authorised to speak on behalf of my former colleagues, but I suspect there was a lot of that going on. In response to Councillor Hoy's statement, you can't prejudge court action. But now the action is over, the outcome of which I personally only found out when the agenda was published for this meeting. I would like to say now that it's terrible when anybody's reputation is so publicly rubbished like that. And I certainly am very sorry that it happened. But I would like Councillor Hoy to realise that we were taken in too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other speakers? I'm not totally sure whether I was going to ask whether there was general consensus. I'm kind of assuming that Reform UK group would vote against the motion. Go ahead.
I feel that I should make a point here. Yes, Councillor Watt is correct. We were taken in. As an individual, I do not condone at all what Andy Osborne do, and I feel I can make a personal apology to Councillor Hoy, but I can't do it on behalf of the Reform Party. Councillor Osborne took it upon himself to make these applications. It was never discussed, and we were never sure of what he'd actually said and what he would say in court. It wasn't for us. We were with Reform, we're taking in as much as anybody else. So, yes, I will make up an apology to Councillor Hoy personally. I can't do it on behalf of the Reform Party because this was nothing to do with the Reform Party and what he said and on whose. He wasn't saying it on behalf of our party. Yes, it is embarrassing. Yes, I don't like it. And I hope we can move on. And like everybody else, no political point intended to be made here. I hope that Roman Bank and Peckover do get a very good representative when the by-election is held in the next month or so. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galbraith. I'm going to stick my neck out and say I think there is general consensus in support of the motion, but of course, if anybody disagrees with that, please raise your hand now. I see no objections, so we will take the motion as carried. Thank you to all the speakers. Item 10 is recommendations to the full council from the Constitution and Ethics Committee, and this is on page 41 of your agenda. Can I ask the Vice Chair of the Council, as Chair of the Constitution and Ethics, to move that recommendation as set out in the report, and Councillor Dupre to second the recommendations as the Vice Chair of that committee?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Councillor Dupre, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'm happy to reserve my right, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, are there questions or comments you wish to make on these recommendations? Councillor Dupre, then it's back to you.
I don't think I have anything to add. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Sanderson?
I have nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, there seems to be general consensus, members, in support of this motion. Again, if anybody disagrees or I may have missed, just raise your hand now. Thank you. I see no objection, so we will take this motion as carried. Item 11 is allocation of seats and substitutes to political groups in accordance with the political balance. I move that the allocation of seats and substitutes on the committees to political groups in accordance with the political balance rules, as set out on pages 66 to 73 of your agenda, be approved. Before I ask the Vice Chair to second, can I just clarify that you're not being asked to approve membership of the committees? There are the opportunities to make changes and advise democratic services. So this is the political balance. Vice Chair, would you like to second?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second the recommendations.
Thank you. Members, could I have any questions or comments on this agenda item? Thank you. Councillor Sanderson, do you want to comment any further?
I have no comments, Chair.
Thank you. There seems to be general consensus in support of the motion. Again, if anybody disagrees, I may have missed, please raise your hand now. I see no objections, and therefore we take the motion as carried. Thank you. Item 12 is appointment of chairs and vice chairs of committees. I move that the proposed appointment of the chair and vice chair of committees as set out in the report on page 74 of the agenda be approved. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second?
I second, Chair.
Thank you. Are the members, are there any questions or comments on the appointment of chairs and vice chairs? Councillor Sanderson, any further comments?
No further comments, Chair.
There seems to be general consensus, members, in support of the motion. Anyone disagrees, just raise your hand. I see no objections and therefore take the motion as carried. Thank you. Item 13 is the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority membership and other appointments. This report was not open to inspection by members of the public 5 clear days before the meeting, as it need to reflect the proportionality calculations following the recent local elections. As chair, I am of the opinion that it should be considered today as a matter of urgency because of forthcoming meetings, in order for the combined authority to be able to enact its business. Therefore, I propose to move as chair the recommendations set out in the report circulated to members and published on the Council's website, and that those recommendations be approved. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second?
I second, Chair.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on this item 13, Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority membership and other appointments? Councillor Nessinger.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question of clarification around this process. It is my understanding, and I just want to check that I'm right and make sure that this is on the public record, that again, these are about the proportionality for those places, both on the Combined Authority and on the Fire Authority, and that it is possible to make changes to the exact names on the lists afterwards under the Chief Executive's delegation.
I believe so, and I'd like the Monitoring Officer to confirm.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
So, members, there seems to be general consensus in the support of this motion. Again, if anyone disagrees, please raise your hand. I see no objections, and therefore we take the motion as carried. Thank you, members. Item 14 is appointment to outside bodies. I propose to move as chair the recommendation set out in the report. Again, here in pages 75 to 77 of the agenda, that those be approved subject to the following changes to the report. So with the Fire Authority, remove Councillor Ross Hathorn and add Councillor Adam Bostanci. On the Police and Crime panel, remove Councillor Elliot Tong and Darren Green as a sub, and now add Councillor Whelan as a member of the committee, as a sub, sorry. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second?
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Members, I think there is general consensus in support of the motion. Again, if anybody disagrees, please raise your hand. I see no objections, and we take the motion as carried. Thank you. Item 15 is to note, I move that the calendar of meetings of the County Council set out on the agenda be approved. I'll ask the Vice Chair to second.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Members, I think there's general consensus in support of the motion. Please raise your hand if you disagree. I see no objections and take the motion as carried. Thank you. Item 16 is motions submitted under the Council Procedure Rule 10. Today we have two motions that have been submitted. The first one is by Councillor Jennifer Malinowski, and I would like to ask her to move and speak to the motion as set out on pages 4 and 5 of the Council agenda. Councillor Malinowski.
Thank you, Chair. I'm bringing this motion today in order to recognise the hard work of many within our county who have been quietly working away supporting our armed forces community. Across Cambridgeshire, thousands of people have served this country with courage, professionalism and sacrifice. From RAF Witton to Bassingbourn Barracks, from veterans in our villages and market towns, to families currently supporting loved ones in service, their contribution is woven into the fabric of our county and our national heritage. Those of us who are active in this area all have stories to share regarding the unseen costs of service. My best friend of almost 20 years is a captain in the Royal Army Medical Service who just last week completed his third house move in 5 years. Another close friend serves aboard one of our nuclear submarines and found himself deployed at sea for over 200 days. Neither would complain, and their service to our country is exemplary, but it is impossible not to think of the very real human toll that that service can have on their families, their relationships, and their lives. That's why today's motion matters. The Armed Forces Covenant is not symbolic, it is practical, it is a promise that those who serve and those who live with, love, and support them should never be disadvantaged because of that service. This council should be proud that it hosts and supports the role of our Armed Forces Covenant Partnership Coordinator for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, Tommy Kelly, whose tireless work behind the scenes has ensured that Cambridgeshire lives up to the words behind this important commitment. We should also be proud that we have achieved gold status under the employer recognition scheme, not once, but again this year through reaccreditation. But there is more to do. Awareness matters. Too many veterans and service families still do not know what support is available to them. Sustainable funding and accountability matter too, if the covenant promise is to mean something in everyday life. So this motion, drafted with the support of Councillor Whelan in collaboration with officers and coming to you today with cross-party support, seeks to address that, ensuring Cambridgeshire continues to deliver on its covenant pledge throughout the period of local government reorganisation ahead of us. Let us prove that we understand that freedom, security and peace are not accidents of history. These concepts are protected by people willing to serve something greater than themselves and willing to lay down their lives for those concepts if it comes to it. While we can never truly, fully repay that debt, we can ensure that our service personnel here in Cambridgeshire, our veterans and their families are respected, supported and never forgotten. So I urge members across this chamber to support the motion today unanimously, because supporting our armed forces community should never be party political. It should simply be the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bywater, I believe you wish to second. Do you want to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right. Happy to second.
Thank you. Members, can I have other speakers wish to address? Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Malinowski, for bringing this motion. I think I was fortunate in actually meeting Tommy Kelly when I was selling poppies for the British Legion at my local Tesco's foyer, and recommended he got in touch with the county council. So I don't know if that was the only referral he had, but I was impressed by his optimism and positivity and willingness to go the extra mile and do all sorts of things to try and improve the life for veterans, and also to work with young people. And his dedication and his commitment to the armed forces was admirable. As anybody who is a poppy seller, you'll find that you discover all sorts of lovely people when you're doing that. And I'm absolutely in support of this motion. I think it's heartily welcomed, and I'm sure it will receive cross-party support. So thank you very much, Councillor Malinowski.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, then Councillor Whelan, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and happy to support this motion this morning. It's also worth adding two other bases that we have within Cambridgeshire, in RAF Alconbury and RAF Molesworth. We are not just an area that hosts British forces, we also host American forces, Five Eyes forces and NATO forces in Cambridgeshire, and particularly in Huntingdonshire. So it's important that we recognise them as well, because they are equally keeping us safe and secure here in Britain as well as across the world. So I think it's important we recognise those as well. I'd also like to add my thanks to Tommy Kelly as well. I've met Tommy a few times. I know he does some fantastic work, not just for this council, but for the wider area. I know he's been in close conversations with the police force as well as the fire service to ensure that they are bringing forward covenants as well. So I'd like to put on the record my thanks for him. The one slight pushback that I will put on this motion is, what more can we do here in Cambridgeshire, and what more can we do here at Cambridgeshire County Council? Because a lot of what we have in this motion, I believe, has come to this council before. This is a bog standard, what every council puts forward when it comes to armed forces covenants. But there are steps that we can take as a council to help our armed forces families. And in particular, I want to talk about education funding. Now, I know a lot of this is set at a national government level, but there are steps that we can take here in Cambridgeshire to help those families that are moving around all too often. And the upheaval that it creates on the young people within our communities is huge. So any support that we can push through our CYP committee for children of the armed forces would be greatly appreciated, and something I would have liked to have seen in this motion today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Whelan, then Councillor Boulat.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in support of this motion as it supports our men and women serving in the armed forces. When we think of the military, we tend to think of the RAF and the army and their families. Often families are living on military bases and they move around, and that's a real problem for them. But we must, however, remember other forces and families that serve this country. I was brought up in a military family, but unlike many others, didn't travel around to various military camps. My dad served in the Royal Navy and often was away from home for several months, leaving my mum to bring up 4 children, one which had learning difficulties, on her own. When my dad eventually came home after serving nearly 25 years, most of it on board ships, many thousands of miles away, it was a massive learning curve for all of us, as suddenly he was there permanently, having been absent for a lot of my early life and for my older brothers most of their childhood. Adjusting to civilian life for my dad was difficult, and for the rest of us too. Military personnel have to adjust to civilian life, which is very different to the life they have been used to. After they leave the military, it becomes a problem for some, and so this is why it is so important to recognise those in our military and to make sure they don't have to struggle in the future. It is up to us to make sure that information about services for the armed forces community is available through the County Council websites, libraries, the Forces Connect app and community services, and these are well communicated. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bulat. Councillor Deswat.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really happy to support this motion, and I would like to congratulate Councillor Malinowski for this motion that is truly of local relevance and cross-party as well. This is an issue that indeed I previously brought to the Council a couple of years ago, but since then a lot has happened nationally, and overall I do believe there's some good progress being made, although a lot more can be done both locally and nationally on this. One of the relevant issues to look at is, of course, the Armed Forces Bill currently before Parliament, and the key issue for me and for so many communities is around housing. And one of the good announcements, I think, is creating this new and most importantly publicly owned defense housing service, which is backed by 9 billion of investment to build, repair and renew tens of thousands of homes. Thousands of homes have already been brought into public ownership, and actually the key thing is this could create significant savings to put back into improving housing, which is a key issue for so many communities. And I think overall we see turning the page from years of private contracts that often failed our communities and have cost the taxpayers billions. There's also some progress nationally on extending the Armed Forces Covenant, as mentioned in the previous speeches, more consistently across central and devolved governments and local authorities. The key question is whether this can be properly funded at the local authority level, but if it is, this should really help tackle the postcode lottery that often is seen in terms of some local services support. I would like just to comment briefly on 2 local recommendations on the motion. I do welcome the proposal to continue the funding for the partnership coordinator role, and I echo the comments about Tommy Kelly and the fantastic job he's doing in Huntingdonshire and across the county. I would like to see those roles ultimately being funded nationally through multi-year funding streams and not up to local decisions, but so far it's a good way we have forward locally. And finally, I do welcome the Royal British Legion's Keep the Covenant Promise campaign, especially mentions of non-UK born serving personnel. And I would like, as a county of sanctuary, to focus on this group as well going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Watt, Councillor Tong, Councillor Sidlow.
Thank you, Chair. It was once said that there is no nobler act than to lay down one's life for a friend, and indeed for their country also. I have been a bit concerned of late of the reports of veterans being homeless and sleeping on the streets, getting second-class treatment when it comes to housing, not getting their medical problems dealt with properly. And I think it's a good thing that we raise this matter again today so that we never forget the debt that we owe these people. So I, for one, support this unbreakable covenant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tong.
Well, to start with, I want to say that I will be supporting this motion. I think people that have served in the armed forces, often at a great personal risk and sacrifice in many cases, they don't get the style of treatment they deserve. They often really end up being betrayed, let down when they've served this function to the government and they just don't have any support. They're effectively thrown away. I've been to a club in my community, the Cambridge Joint Service and Veterans Club, that provides so much support to veterans. And I think that's a fantastic thing. And at a county level, we absolutely need to be doing our part, making sure that veterans get that level of support. That's something that is really, really important to me. I will, however, with some comments that have been made, particularly from Councillor Watt a moment ago, note that I don't think we should romanticize war and the idea of dying for your country. I don't think we should really engage with this sort of jingoistic attitude. I don't think dying for your country is a good thing. I think war is a terrible thing. It should be avoided at all cost. Sometimes it is necessary, unfortunately. We are forced into that situation. However, we need to remember these are people's lives, and at every opportunity, we need to be making sure those people don't have to lay down their lives. I'd much prefer it if they could go on living in happiness and peace.
Thank you. Councillor Sidlow.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I support this motion and the Council's renewed commitment to the Armed Forces Covenant. Cambridgeshire has a significant armed forces community, more than 22,000 veterans and over 3,000 serving regular and reserve personnel locally. So this is not just a symbolic issue. It's a practical one. I particularly welcome the commitment to re-sign the covenant, improve awareness through the Council's services, libraries and Forces Connect, and to continue annual reporting and support with the local coordinator role. But after attending the Ramsey Veterans Breakfast on Saturday and receiving follow-up comments from the local Royal British Legion chair, I think we must be clear about what still needs to change, because the question raised with me was quite simple. It's when a veteran is in crisis, who takes the responsibility? And the covenant means more than just signposting. It should mean a clear pathway to urgent support, safety, shelter, warmth, benefits, advice, a registered address for housing support, employment help, and a safe handover between agencies. And I would like to see practical steps taken towards these goals. So I absolutely support the motion and hope that future annual reporting includes specific focus on the veterans that end up in crisis, with named partner responsibilities, live contact points and input specifically from our local veterans organisations on the ground, who see the practical implications and the struggles that people have in accessing the services and support that comes from the covenant, which must be felt in practice and not just endorsed in principle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Beckett.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I also very much support this motion and want to thank Jennifer for bringing this forwards. Myself personally, while I never served properly, I did spend some time with the TA while I was a student, and I know a large number of people that do now serve and have a large number of friends that do. And seeing the toll that it takes not just on them, but also on their families is incredibly powerful. And having this motion today to actually bring forward more support for those is really greatly appreciated, I know, by members of the community. I know personally I have friends that have struggled with having EHCPs for their children, and their children are always moving around from base to base and not necessarily getting the support that they need. So anything that we can do as a council to be able to help those that do give so much for our society and give so much to protect all of us, I think is incredibly important. So I will be supporting this, and thank you very much for bringing it forwards.
Thank you. If there are no other speakers, I will go back to Councillor Ioannidis. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. As an ex-serviceman, and one that's actually relatively recent with my DAOR being in November 23, I will be in support of this motion. I'm not going to parrot the good points already made, but I'd like to follow up on Councillor Martin's point about working out what more we can achieve for veterans in Cambridge, in Cambridgeshire. So I'd like to extend my invitation to excuse me, to all in this chamber, working across parties, to hopefully find out what more we can do to support our 22,500 plus veterans in this county that deserve priority in housing, health, education, etc. Because although we've adopted the covenant in this council before, I still find that I don't receive priority for GP appointments, even though I have a serious injury of my spine. And also when I needed financial support assistance for 6 months whilst I was in recovery, I was told I wouldn't receive this support and I should sell my house. And once I'd extinguished the equity within the house, then I would receive support. I mean, that didn't make much sense because by the time I sold the house, I wouldn't no longer needed the support. So I found that there was no support there for myself. You know, I could live with this personally, but I won't accept that for my brothers and sisters who have given a large part of themselves and their families for this great nation. So I'd like to say to all members here, please reach out to me, and I'll be happy to work with you all on what more we can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bywater, as seconder, you reserve your right to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, really welcome all the comments that have been made, and unsurprisingly, I'm happy to second and support this motion. As a former Royal Marine veteran myself, this is just not an abstract issue for me. I've lost friends on operations. I've seen firsthand the physical and psychological impact that conflict and service can have on individuals and their families. So I absolutely welcome any effort to strengthen the support for veterans, serving personnel and the wider forces community. But I also want to place something firmly on public record today. Too often the national conversation around veterans focuses only on trauma, hardships, struggle after service. Yes, some veterans do face very real challenges, as Ricky's outlined, and they deserve every ounce of support that we can give them. But that's not the whole story. There are thousands and thousands of veterans, myself included, who have come out the other side of service highly motivated, resilient, disciplined and determined individuals. People who continue serving their communities in different ways. People who become business owners, public servants, teachers, charity leaders, skilled workers, MPs, councillors, mentors and role models. Veterans have enormous value to offer society, and we should say that proudly and unapologetically. However, I'd also say this. I believe it is deeply damaging that many veterans now feel persecuted rather than protected by the very country they served. The repeated pursuit and prosecution of veterans years after operations has, in my view, been a public disaster. It sends a terrible message to those currently serving and to younger generations considering a career in the armed forces. If we ask our young men and women to put themselves in harm's way on behalf of this nation, then we must do absolutely everything to show loyalty to them when they come home after service. Supporting the Armed Forces Covenant must mean more than words. It must mean fairness, respect, opportunity, action, and standing by those who stood up for us. I'd urge you all to support this motion and thank my colleague for bringing it in the first place. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Malinowski, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Council, for the cordial discussion. It's been really heartwarming to hear so many personal stories today from councillors about how the armed forces and the Covenant have impacted so many lives. I'd like to thank, first of all, Councillor Bywater for seconding this so that we could bring it as a cross-party motion, and for his comments just there, for his personal testimony and service, and particularly highlighting the issues that veterans face outside of the typical discourse around trauma. There are a lot of aspects of public life that people need support with. I welcome Councillor Martin's comments earlier, demonstrating the scope of the Covenant across Cambridgeshire, and indeed for mentioning NATO and Five Eyes forces, and I take on board his feedback regarding the motion. Councillor Boulat, thank you for highlighting the importance of working cross-party and taking the Covenant further. Councillor Watt, thank you for shining a light on the plight of veterans and the homeless, and for your support for the Covenant. Councillor Tong, thank you for supporting and promoting the work of your local veterans clubs. And I agree with you that war is a terrible thing and should be avoided at all costs, but I thank you for emphasising how important it is that we promote the well-being of those prepared to fight in such a conflict. Councillor Sidlow, Councillor Ioannidis, thank you for your support and for your calls for practical steps to make annual reporting better for our veterans. This is a big focus of the work that Tommy is undertaking, and I know that your comments are welcome in that regard. Practical oversight and more work is always needed. We need to continue raising that. Thank you for your support, Councillor Beckett, and your contribution, Councillor Whelan as well, just for that personal testimony and for helping, and for the other Councillor Whelan for helping me to bring this motion together and working with officers to make it collaborative and forward-looking. Thank you. Finally, I'd like to reiterate that we live in uncertain times and that the work and welfare of our armed forces has never been more important. So please do support this motion and show that Cambridgeshire stands with service personnel, their families, and all who work to support them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, I believe there is general consensus in support of the motion. Just in case I missed it, if anyone disagrees, could you raise your hand now? I see no objections, and therefore we will take that motion as carried. Thank you very much. That concludes discussion of the first motion. We now move to the second motion submitted by Councillor Lewis Navarro. Can I ask Councillor Navarro to move and speak to his motion set out on pages 6 and 7 of the Council agenda? Councillor Navarro.
Thank you, Chair. When I was a child, I was given a train set. Not just trains, but the history that came with it. How this country built the railways and through them connected towns, unlocked opportunity, and shaped communities not just here, but across the world. That story stayed with me. Because today, in my division, families are looking at a very different kind of story. They are not reading about connection and opportunity. They are seeing maps filled up with logistics proposals, and they are asking simple questions. What will this mean for the roads my children cross, for the air we breathe, for flooding in our already stretched landscapes, for the character of the places we call home? And perhaps most importantly, is this the only way we can grow? Because growth matters, jobs matter, our economy matters, but how we grow matters just as much. Our rail network, the very network that should be carrying much of this freight, is constrained at key points. And when rail cannot cope, the freight does not disappear. It comes onto our roads. But it doesn't have to be this way. National policy is already clear. Less road freight, more rail and multimodal. Because rail freight is not just an environmental choice. It's a practical one. It removes large numbers of lorries from our roads. It reduces emissions. It supports a more resilient and efficient transport network. In short, it allows us to grow, but to grow better. And this is what this motion is about. To support a strategic freight study across the combined authority area. That means aligning logistics with our rail corridors, safeguarding the right locations, and enabling the development of rail-served multimodal distribution that works with our infrastructure, not against it. I believe we all share the same duty: to protect the health and well-being of our residents, to safeguard our environment, to ensure that our infrastructure is resilient, and to support economic growth in a way that is sustainable and fair. Today, we have a chance to speak with one voice, to say, we support growth, but better growth. We support logistics, but smarter logistics. We support our communities fully and firmly. And perhaps in doing so, we can begin to reconnect with something that has always been one of this country's greatest strengths. Using innovation and infrastructure, not just to move goods, but to improve lives.
You'll have an opportunity at the end as well. Councillor Beckett, I believe you were going to second. Would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
Yeah, I'll second and reserve my right. Thanks, Chair.
Members, can I have speakers? Councillor Seif? Councillor Seif, Councillor Green, Councillor Golzak, Councillor Tong.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to use this opportunity to highlight a particular example of a road in my division, which exhibits the problems that we're talking about here. It's the road, about half a mile stretch, called Nelson Road. It joins Bushmead Road at its north, which stretches into villages and small villages, agricultural areas, farms, out to the A6 on one end, and at its southern end, it connects with the Great Northern Road, which leads on to the A1 and eventually to the A428. It's a residential road. There's a school at the northern end, and at the bottom end, there's a very small mini roundabout, at one corner of which stands a 300-year-old listed cottage. Lorries, and let me just say, this is used as a rat run by, certainly during the summer, with lots of agricultural products coming down and agricultural produce going the other way. That cottage, it sits on the corner, and the owner, the elderly owner of this cottage, lives in fear that one day she will be enjoying tea in her living room, accompanied by a driver and his cab. It takes many turns for the lorries to turn round that mini roundabout. There are speed restrictions on this road, rarely observed. There's quite a nice curved section with a very nice camber, which offers opportunities to would-be Lewis Hamiltons. And we, of course, have spoken to officers about possibilities of what enforceable weight restrictions. But if they are brought in, it will only displace traffic somewhere else. So that sort of highlights the need for a strategic study that looks at the whole picture rather than that one road, which is certainly giving us plenty of problems at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Golzak, Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of points to add. I'd like to thank Councillor Navarro for bringing the subject matter before us, and I think it's a very important subject. However, I'd also like to add that there's a couple of things missing and a question. And the question is, what if the CPCA say no thank you? The motion's dead and we've gone nowhere, and that worries me on motions when we write to other people and ask them to do something. It's a concern. Secondly, we have a major issue in our area, and it's called Ely North. The Ely North junction is a huge issue, and it's stopping rail freight, it's stopping passenger freight. In my own ward of Soham, we opened a new station, and it was going to be an hourly service going to and from Cambridge. At the moment, you can get on a train and go to Bury St Edmunds in one direction, or you can go to Ely in the other. Then you have to change because of the Ely North situation. And the current government have overlooked this for investment. It wasn't on the latest infrastructure list again, and until it is, we're going nowhere with it. And unfortunately, so is this motion, because we can go all we like, but until the Ely North junction is cleared, the impact on the whole of Cambridgeshire's rail network and the ability to carry extra freight is in danger. So I wish you well with the motion, because I think it's really well intended and know what you're trying to achieve here. But I think there are limitations that we've set amongst ourselves here. What I would like to see, and I apologise profusely for not speaking to you before today and suggesting an amended motion, which is, I think what we need to do is we need to encourage greater local MP support in the Houses of Parliament to actually get some support for this to be on the infrastructure list. Because without the Ely North list, we're going nowhere. And in particular, I would ask for the Ely Member of Parliament, Charlotte Kane, to get on the bandwagon, literally get on the rail wagon and try and sort out the Ely North junction, because it's in her desk to do it. But good luck with the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney, then Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think this motion is well intentioned. I think this motion is another example of what this council is famous for, and many councils like it are also famous for, which is an obsession with bureaucratic top-down control and talking shops. There is no benefit whatsoever in trying to force different choices upon those choices that the markets make. In fact, if you free the markets and deregulate them, they will deliver the cheapest cost to the most people. But of course, we keep interfering, pretending we know better than millions of people's personal choices, and it never leads anywhere good, ever. And it won't lead anywhere good this time, except that it won't work, because none of this will lead to anything whatsoever. Complete and utter waste of time. I don't support it. Thank you.
you, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. So I do support this motion, and thank you to Councillor Navarro for bringing it. I don't totally agree with the emphasis on growth. A lot of the freight traffic we see just speaks to me of the sort of rampant consumerism that we have in society at the moment. However, it is clear we've got to get the freight that is transported off the roads. There's seems to be great difficulty in electrifying heavy goods vehicle transport. So yes, rail is a great option there. I'm mindful of the amount of traffic that passes through our county on the A14 and the A428, bringing goods from the ports on the east and taking them to distribution centres in the Midlands. And the resolution of this motion recommends a study in collaboration with Network Rail. I'd also like to see East-West Rail. I'm not sure whether Network Rail includes East-West Rail, but I'd like to see East-West Rail included in the discussion. Whenever I've been to consultations with East-West Rail, the focus has been on new stations and passenger services, and I think there's an opportunity there to take a bold sort of stance for East-West Rail to take a large amount of freight as well. So I'd like to see that in any sort of case study that comes about. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bulat. Councillor Black.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's an interesting topic to debate, but the motion, the only thing it actually asks is the combined authority to commission yet another study, depending on whether they say yes or no. So the outcome is another study without really seeing what the outcome of that study would be, especially in the absence or limited national investment on this. So while I'm not opposed to having more research or strategy in this particular area, I do think we're avoiding having the more difficult conversation about the actual practical realities we face and the need for shorter term solutions as well along on HGV traffic, alongside having this longer term strategic investment conversation. Like many members here, I do regularly hear concerns from residents about the volume of traffic through our towns and villages, and we do need to be honest that it's simply not realistic, I think, to suggest that HGVs can just be phased out altogether or phased out quickly, particularly in rural counties like ours, where alternatives will continue to be quite limited unless we have huge and significant investment nationally, which, as we have mentioned in debate, seems quite unlikely at the moment. Many of us represent areas where non-local HGVs in particular are traveling along roads with schools, nurseries, active travel routes, and residential streets, including new and not so new 20-mile-an-hour zones. And residents often tell me about HGVs speeding at night, the lack of limited enforcement and funding for that, and also how further damage the roads is done on roads that are already poorly maintained. So when I speak about HGV concerns and traffic, I think my residents, or most of my residents, don't really want another strategic study. While many might see its value long term, my residents would like to see more practical highway solutions that make a difference locally. So I do understand the intention behind the motion and happy to debate it, but I do think we risk focusing too much on long-term ambition and less so on short-term practical reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Black and Councillor Watt.
Thank you very much, Chair. I can't see any obstacle to supporting this motion, which seems very well intentioned. The flaw in it, I suppose, is it does just leave to a survey, and the biggest problem with it is who we're sending it to. It might well end up on the desk as somebody who has no interest in railways, no interest in public service, and no interest in the environment, and that it may well not be have anything done with it at all. In fact, possibly we might as well send it to the desk of Councillor Tierney and see what marvellous actions he would do with a motion like this. But the motion addresses a real problem. The failure of privatised railways in this country is a national scandal. For 15 years or more, we have had very little done about the problem that freight railways have been declining. More and more tonnage goes on the roads. The amount of tonnage of freight going on our railways has collapsed. Now, the bureaucracy issue, that I think that you've got to also look at the the way private railways are run and the privatisation system, and the bureaucracy actually comes from that, rather than a unified system with people trying to do things to their best for the public good. We have a system where different parts of the railway are totally negotiating with each other and trying to aggrandise themselves at other parts of the railway's expense. What we need is a uniform publicly owned railway. And what this motion fails to consider is that we have a government that wants to change things, that will soon come to the end of its manifesto commitments and should be thinking about where it can go further. And we should be calling for the nationalisation of freight railway. I'd like to conclude, Chair. May the 31st, we have the joyous occasion of the majority of passenger railways in Cambridge coming into public ownership. Great Northern, Thameslink.
Thanks a lot.
Southern.
Thanks,
So
Councillor Blunt.
let's rejoice at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watt.
Thank you, Chair. In principle, concern for the environment is commendable, and getting more trucks off the road and onto the rails seems to be the ideological way of doing it. It passes the test of ideology, but is it practical? When is essential track maintenance to be done? Well, it's normally done at night. It's done at weekends. And when is most freight moved? At exactly the same time. So there are practical considerations here. At the very least, we should be asking what bureaucratic obstacles have we put in the way over the years? Can these be removed to give a more of a cost incentive to put more goods onto the railway? If I was going to be really constructive, we should push the rail authorities to get on with closing all the level crossings on the main routes, which they promised more than a decade ago to do. They've done all the cost studies, they've got all the plans and all the drawings, but I don't think, to my knowledge, they've done any flyovers over level crossings anywhere. The only one I can think of as a result of a bypass is the Ralph Butcher Causeway. And look how problematic that was. I approve of the motion, but I think we should also include in our wording that we'd like to see the reduction of bureaucracy and red tape. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Manning and Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Seif spoke to a very similar set of points I was going to make, so I'll just be brief about them. Fen Road in my division is very similar. It's constrained. It's one of those wonderful examples where residents look at it and go, why on earth is it designed like this? It runs from Cambridge City into South Cambs, back into Cambridge City, and all the HGVs have to go through a residential area. But to pick up on Councillor Tierney's point about the markets doing everything, the point here is that the market is constrained. Residents will look at that and think, that road is right next to Cambridge North Station. So why wasn't there a joined up approach at the time? And it was because there wasn't a wider strategy like this where the state can step in and say, actually, you should be thinking about those HGV movements and the Cambridge North Station project and see if you can get some of that HGV onto freight. So I very much support the ambition in this motion. Thank you.
Very much. Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. I won't be supporting this motion today, and we're hearing a lot about growth and how this would benefit growth, but for me it's actually anti-economic growth, and the unintended consequences of having such a policy would be quite stark and huge. We're saying that this would take HGVs off the road. It wouldn't take HGVs off the road, it would just change where they're going to. I have a manufacturer in Warboys called Fentex. If they were to use rail freight, they would still have to be, the items would still have to be collected from Warboys and then transported to somewhere they can connect to the railway. Now, Councillor Manning has just spoken about Cambridge North. Well, that is a passenger station, not for freight. We can't be sending HGVs to our passenger network stations to deal with freight. So essentially, we'll be sending all of those HGVs to one point. Let's say a point north of Huntingdon, in our case. which is going to increase congestion and going to increase the level of HGVs on the road in that particular area, rather than them just going to wherever they need to go. So the freedom that this would, the lack of freedom that this would then have on manufacturers in our area is quite stark. And I don't think that this would help growth in any way, shape or form, because either we're going to see a growth in traffic around those stations for rail freight, or we're going to see companies move away from where they currently are nearer to those hubs to be more economical. That isn't good for rural businesses like the ones in my division. And I want to just finish on a final point. I completely accept the infrastructure isn't up to scratch to deal with some of this, but rail existed before HGVs. So if rail was a solution, why isn't it the solution now? We have HGVs for a reason, because that is better for the markets, as Councillor Tierney points out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Can I make a point of personal exclamation?
Can
I make a point of personal exclamation as Councillor Martin, which is very brief.
let me hear it.
It's just that the point about Cambridge North, as I was trying to explain in my speech, is when it was originally, before it became a passenger station, it was actually used for freight.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, Councillor Whelan, then Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, in Ely, HGV traffic is already a real pressure on our roads, and our residents raise this frequently. The Ely area capacity enhancement needs to be progressed. There's no excuse for it not to be. Ely sits at a nationally significant rail junction. Improving capacity will enable a wider shift from road freight to rail freight across the region and beyond for many vehicles which are actually travelling across the county rather than from within to within. Without that strategic rail capacity, the consequence will be that more freight stays on the roads, more heavy vehicles through Cambridgeshire, more pressure on already constrained routes, and more impact on our communities. Now, I've spoken to our MP, Charlotte Kane, who is very much pushing for this in Westminster. But, you know, this traffic is not just at night, it is also during the day that these trains can run, and they do, and they can make a big difference. We need to get to this point of having a joined up, evidence-based approach to this planning, these schemes, so that we can get them over the line. And I think that therefore this motion is trying to do that. So please do support it.
Thank you. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Firstly and parochially, through my village of Sutton runs the B1381. The campaign for a weight limit through the village has been going unsuccessfully for over 15 years. It is the most important matter facing our residents, and the thing that matters most to them is to achieve that. Key to achieving that, or one of the keys, there are several, is, as others have said, unlocking the Ely North Junction to enable more freight to travel by rail. I'm delighted that the MP for my constituency, for whom I worked so hard as I would say, trained agent, has been active in Parliament, very active. She mentioned the matter in her maiden speech. She procured a debate in Parliament precisely on this subject. So we do need to move forward with that, and that's essential. My second point is that a little while ago, a few years, I chaired a working group within this authority on weight limits through our communities. And one issue that came up time and time again was the lack of adequate provision for HGV drivers, for proper stopovers, the kind of thing you see on continental Europe where good provision is made, and all of that falls totally between the different bodies, the different tiers of local government. That needs to be resolved, and I hope that this motion will help move that forward. I totally support asking the combined authority to do some further work on this. And the question has been asked by Councillor Goldsack, what if the CPA says no? Well, firstly, that's a risk, and it's part of our rich tapestry of local government, but it is also very much in the hands of people like Councillor Goldsack, who have the ear of the Mayor, and also of other members who have the ear of government on this. So I wish everybody well in moving this forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Bradnam, Councillor Sidlow.
Thank you, Chair. I simply wanted to respond to the point that, or the question, the rhetorical point that Councillor Goldsack made about Charlotte Kane MP and what she was doing about it. And I wanted to clarify that she did in fact host a debate in Parliament in early December 2025, looking at the upgrade of the Ely North Junction and the importance of that. And at that debate, the Department for Transport spokesman recognised the scheme's importance and it was that the had received support from previous government, but unfortunately funding proving problematic. So what I would like to point out is that this is a perfectly sensible motion to try and get that looked at locally, and that pressure being put on by the local combined authority onto government to try and leverage that funding to come through. Because absolutely, as we've heard around the chamber today, it is a crucial piece of infrastructure which we very much need to be upgraded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sidlow, then Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chair. I am supportive of upgrading the rail system. I do support the use of rail to move freight around the country, and if it can be used to move freight more efficiently around the county, then I am supportive of that. So I'm not against doing that. We've moved away from rail since the Victorian age, and every town and village used to have a rail station. And you know, if it's viable economically, then we should look into that. My other thought was maybe based on what the Green Councillor said, we should look at reopening the canals, go back to potentially pony-powered boat transport. This might meet the Greens' agenda of degrowth. So seriously, this is this practical? Because I live in Ramsey, and I obviously represent my residents there, and the effect of HGVs moving through Ramsey and the surrounding villages is very unlikely to be reduced by improving the rail system. Because as Councillor Martin pointed out, all of the businesses, the farms, the distribution centres in the area are unlikely to get their own train station for freight, so everything's going to still need to move from these areas to a larger hub where it then extends out. So I would like to see, if possible, that the study's results, where they show the need, also inform future highways development and improvement in areas where the option of rail isn't a possibility. And maybe inform the introduction of weight limits and bypasses, because one thing I hear a lot is that bypass of Ramsey and the villages has been talked about since before I was born and has never materialized. And we need to look after the smaller communities who are not going to benefit from these large infrastructure projects. So thank you.
Thank you. I've got... let me see. Go ahead.
I didn't mention anything about canals.
All right. Okay, that was a figment of Councillor Sidlow's imagination. Thank you. Maybe debate canals another time. Councillor Bowden, Councillor Tong, Councillor Galbraith. I don't want to take any more speakers if you don't mind, because I want to get to 12:30 and conclude.
Thank you, Chair. Before becoming a councillor here 11 years ago, I was the managing director of an international logistics group, which did include one of the 100 largest UK haulage companies, and also included a couple of haulage companies which were in the heavy haulage industry, where goods have to travel by road. They can't travel by rail because they're just too large. So I have to say from my personal experience that the assumptions which are within this motion are unrealistic, because the overwhelming majority of road freight transport, which is currently transported by road, can't efficiently be transported by rail. Councillor Martin explained one part of that, and that is that for a very large amount of freight, which is currently transported by road, you'd need to transport it initially by road from its point of origin to a railhead. Then you have to get it onto a rail carriage. Then it has to be transported to another railhead. Then it's got to be taken off that carriage. It's got to be put onto another road haulage vehicle to get to its final destination. And that, A, is not efficient, and B, is also a lengthy amount of time that is taken, especially for relatively short journeys. And in logistics, increasingly, it is a very time-sensitive operation. Now, having said all of that, I personally believe there is a desperate need for more freight to travel by rail, but we are constrained by the rail infrastructure. And until we have things such as the Ely North Junction created and sorted out, we will not have the infrastructure needed efficiently to carry the high volume, long distance freight, which can most effectively be and efficiently be transported by rail. So I am against this motion because it's built on a false premise. We do need to have a better rail freight infrastructure, but for the future, we not merely need that, we'll also need to transport more goods by road as well, because with economic growth, there will be more goods to be transported, and we'll need both road and rail to be expanded.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Tong and Councillor Galbraith, and then I'm going to go back to the seconder and the mover.
I love trains. I think rail infrastructure is absolutely fantastic, and we desperately need more of it across our area. It's green, it's cheap. Rail is absolutely just a no-brainer in my mind. To respond to a few of the points that have come out today, firstly, I want to say I'm also really, really supportive of improving Ely Junction. As people have noted, it's a massive bottleneck that has been due investment for so long. I think people have been actively campaigning on it for around 25 years, and well, responsibility kind of keeps on getting kicked down the road, and eventually, hopefully now, we can get some decisive action taken on it. Obviously not just through us, but I think everyone has a role in putting pressure on the government to actually make this expenditure happen. I will briefly engage with some of the critiques of let the market decide. We've heard from a few councillors, because we have seen rail across this country suffer drastically over the last couple of decades, and that's because fundamentally rail is an incredibly monopolized industry. It's one where we can't let the market decide. It needs outside management, because frankly competition doesn't really exist in the world of rail, and because we have allowed this market approach to rail, we have seen rail suffer so massively. We've seen what could be a fantastic technology, should be a fantastic technology, get totally wasted. I will agree with, I believe it was Councillor Goldsack that originally raised it, which was that this motion relies quite heavily on the cooperation of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, and I think that is a concern. However, I think this is a great way we can at least start the process of trying to cooperate on this, because frankly, we need to make sure we are moving more of our freight onto rail, and we need to start taking steps to cooperate with the other authorities that this affects.
Thank you. Final speaker, Councillor Galbraith.
Thank you, Chair. The motion is a salad of fine but unrealistic words. After spending over 50 years and still going in the business of import and export, distribution and storage, I feel qualified to comment on this finally intended motion, but in the end one which has no hope of making any difference or change in the near, medium or long-term future. Cambridgeshire primarily is not a county of end receipt or dispatch of goods. The Midlands sit in the strategic points for national distribution. Cambridgeshire is basically an agricultural supply county, and the days of rail distribution has long gone, starting with the Beecham cuts of the 1960s, not in the last 15-20 years. Goods of all type pass through Cambridgeshire mainly via the A14, M11 and A1, and as many companies now work on a just-in-time basis, the idiosyncrasies and unreliability of our rail systems don't lend any encouragement to business. Containerised non-urgent goods do travel already by rail at a rate of 6 trains per hour through the county using the Ipswich to Ely to March to Peterborough line. I'm led to believe there is no or little or no capacity to add to that schedule. Locally, a rail hub was intended to be built at Ely on the old sugar factory site, but it's come to nothing after it was realised it would have little national strategic value. The much vaunted East-West Rail new line is likely to have a very minor effect on goods flow for delivery and distribution, because unless there's a very large investment in freight terminals by government, it has little possible freight impact. I quote from the EWR own website: "The primary purpose of East-West Rail is to provide connectivity between communities and support economic growth as a passenger service." This motion suggests rail modal services are a novel idea. They are not. In the 70s, a terminal was built at Paddock Wood in Kent for fresh produce and bulk goods from France, Spain and Portugal. However, with rail integration unreliability, the terminal closed 15 years ago. Rail, in any case, doesn't provide any means of controlled temperature movement, and that's where the greatest demand has come.
Thank you.
In recent years.
Thank you, Councillor Galbraith. Thanks a lot. I'm now going to return to Councillor Beckett. You reserve your right to speak.
Thank you, Chair. And I support this motion not because I loved trains as a kid, not because I represent an area like the A14. I support it simply because it makes sense and is sensible. Rail freight in Cambridgeshire is continuously overlooked, and the lack of joined-up strategy is severely limiting. While the A14 has been upgraded, it's obvious that anything we can do to reduce HGV demand and relocate it to the rail would be beneficial, both from reducing traffic, reducing pollution, reducing noise, but also improving lives for our residents. Sadly, though, rail freight in Cambridgeshire has been severely neglected. From successive governments failing to fund Ely area capacity enhancements to not delivering East-West Rail being fully electrified, it all leads to more traffic on our network. Ely area capacity is a prime example of this failure. Enhancements around Ely would increase capacity for freight trains at Felixstowe, the UK's busiest container port, from 36 to 42 train movements per day, removing nearly 98,000 HGVs from our roads each year. It has a BCR of nearly 5 to 1, and yet was not funded in the summer spending review of 2025. Councillor Black, given your statements about Great British Railways, it was really disappointing to see government failing to fund Ely area capacity enhancements. As others have said, it was great to see, though, Charlotte Kane raising this in Parliament, especially since the scheme has a higher BCR than many other schemes that were actually successful in that round of funding. So yes, Councillor Goldsax, really good to see Charlotte shouting from the rooftops about it and about soil-affected roads, unlike some of her predecessors. With East West Rail, we're building a new railway, but we're building it right now without full electrification and insisting generations of freight trains are having to be diesel. And it's just silly, absolutely silly to be building a brand new rail network in this age without electrifying it fully along the full route. It's not just rail though. As Councillor Dupre mentioned, issues with overnight services for HGV drivers, parking and amenities for them are all very real issues that affect freight in our communities. In my own division, there are issues with large HGVs coming into the city centre of Cambridge. While that is sometimes appropriate to serve shops, too often though a huge lorry is forced to come in simply to unload a small pallet, as there are no other options for getting freight into the city. The draft freight strategy was due to start in 2024-2025. It was actually the previous mayor, Councillor Nick, that suggested that and put it forwards, but as far as I'm aware, it hasn't started. I was actually really quite disappointed to see Councillor Bowden here, who is actually the chair of the CPCA Transport Committee, not telling us that that was about to be restarted. When we talk today about whether we have any powers here, we actually have, the chair of the CPCA Transport Committee in the room and myself as the vice chair. So I really hope that as a council, we do have power to be able to make sure this starts. I was really hoping that we might have been told that this was close to completion. Obviously, a strategy like this would fit really well with the CPCA's local platform connectivity plan. And their work on other strategies. So I really support this and hope it can be brought forwards.
Thank you very much. Councillor Navarro, would you like to sum up?
So, would I like to sum up? Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would love to sum up. I am not going to waste too much time on the single negative comment. The lack of imagination, the lack of ambition that we are showing in this chamber. I welcome, though, every single other contribution, because that's what I love to be in this chamber. Ambition is the word. Thank you, Councillor Whelan, for pointing out that we act evidence-led. That is why my proposal, the motion says, we need to ask CPCA to conduct this so we know what we can do and what is possible. I am not going to pass my ignorance as an opinion. That's why we need to know. But let me give you just one fact for those that hinted or said that this will solve nothing. There are 1,000 lorries a day that go across the A14 because we don't have a railway network that links Felixstowe to the Golden Triangle in the Midlands. 1,000 lorries a day. The right infrastructure at the Ely hub. EWR thinking about doing something in Camborne could unlock an awful lot of freight and free our roads. I appeal to your ambition. Why are you here for, if not to try to deliver the best for the residents that you represent? I am not throwing the towel. And I'm asking you to support this motion because you shouldn't throw the towel for your residents. Your residents wouldn't do it. There is a better way. And we are Britain. I became an Anglophile age 7, in part because that little toy that told me what you were capable of, how you transformed the world. Do not tell me it is not possible. It is possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I believe there is not a consensus overall, and therefore I would like to take an electronic vote. Mrs. Rowe, could you start the vote, please?
Members in favour of the motion, please press the button underneath the word yes. Members against the motion, please press the button underneath the word no. Members wishing to abstain, please press the button underneath the word abstain. Chair, I'm now closing the vote. The result of the vote is 42 votes in favour, 15 against and 2 abstentions. The motion is therefore carried.
Thank you very much, members. Members, it is 12:35, but I hope you'll bear with me through the last item. Last item, we have item 17, which is Cambridge and Peterborough Combined Authority questions, and also for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So oral questions which may be dealt with in accordance with the protocol set out in Annex 1 of Part 4.1 Council Procedure Rules of the Constitution. Can I remind you that councillors may ask questions for response by the council's appointee on the Combined Authority and its appointees to the Combined Authority Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which relate to questions from the Combined Authority Board and Overview and Scrutiny Committee. The generic report summarising the decisions made by the Combined Authorities formal committees is included on your agenda on page 78. Can you please raise your hand now if you wish to ask a question of Councillor Nethsinger, who is the council's appointee on the board? You have 2 minutes in which to ask a question and 1 supplementary. Okay, Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. And it may seem rather strange that one member of the Combined Authority Board is asking a question of another member of the Combined Authority Board, but I'd like to do so to give Councillor Nethsinger the opportunity to correct a misinterpretation that some members may have, having read the papers we have in front of us. And those papers on page 78 of the report include a report from the Transport Committee, which took place on the 4th of March 2026, which includes various items to do with the work of the Transport Committee, and particularly to do with the local transport delivery plan, where a number of items to do with the authority of this council to have prioritisation over funding utilisation were included as extra items and are in bold in the report that we've got. However, what isn't clear from the papers is that the subsequent meeting of the Combined Authority Board did not agree those items, and it was deemed that those items illegally fettered the discretion that the Mayor has got. And I just wanted to give Councillor Nethsinger the opportunity just to ensure that members aren't under the misapprehension that those which are shown decisions of the Transport Committee actually were agreed by the Combined Authority Board.
Okay, Councillor Nethsinger, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Chris for spotting that what's in the papers is what went to the board rather than what was agreed by the board. And I do agree with Chris that what was agreed by the board was not the recommendations from the Transport Committee. They were significantly reduced. I will, however, take this opportunity of answering Chris's question to add that I feel really quite concerned about the situation with the transport delivery, the transport strategies, because the board meeting was really quite a long time ago now. I was thinking as I was answering questions that I'm going to struggle to remember exactly what happened at the board meeting because it is quite a long time ago. And as yet, I've heard nothing about what's been going on with those transport strategies, and they are urgent. So while Chris is right, and I welcome his intervention and the opportunity to say to members of this council that that those things which were agreed by the Transport Committee itself were not exactly what was agreed by the board, and there is separate wording which people will be able to find, I'm sure, on the Combined Authorities website. I am still concerned about the lack of progress on the transport strategy itself. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe you have supplementary. No, thank you, Chris. Any other questions to Councillor Nessinger, a representative on the CPCA board? Thank you. Can you now raise your hand if you wish to ask a question of Councillors Alison Whelan and Robin Wyatt, who are Council's appointees on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee? Again, you have 2 minutes in which to ask a question and 1 for a supplementary. Are there any questions to the representative on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee? No, thank you, members. The final item today under 17B is written questions. A response to the 1 written question received has been circulated electronically to members and published on the website. Councillor Goodliffe.
I have a point of order, please, Chair, under Rule 14.33. I believe that the response given to my written question is materially inaccurate and therefore risks misleading the Council. I ask that you, Chair, require the clarification and correction of the record, please.
I could certainly ask the Chair to comment at this stage. Councillor Whelan declines, I think, to comment on at this stage.
It's not appropriate to comment. That is not the rules here. A question was asked and the question has been answered.
Yeah, thank you. I would rule that I would agree with that. There are written questions which have been submitted and answered. Members, that concludes business on our agenda today. I'd like to thank you all for your contribution and your time. Thank you very much.